Ben, is that the studio for the podcast right there?
It's my hole. If I go like this a few feet farther, I'll touch a wall. And if I, and if I had to expand out, you'll see all the soundproof stuff on the roof over there. So that's who we are.
Perfect. That's how I first came about to get to know you. Obviously, I mean, as a golf podcast guy, walking my dogs, I stumbled across that podcast. So every day, 20-30 minute walk, I listen to you, and dog does its business. It's perfect.
I appreciate you. I see you wearing the Michigan stuff. You involved with Michigan, or are you from there? Or?
So yeah, I live in Grand Rapids, which is on the west side of the state. And then I went to school at U of M, and I played for Michigan back in the early 2000s.
Grand Rapids, we were, maybe I'm getting confused, but we had a national championship Division II there a few years ago at the university course. I mean, it was a great little town there.
Yeah, you guys were at Grand Valley.
Grand Valley, yeah, forgive me. Yeah, I knew it was Grand.
Yeah. But like 10 minutes from downtown, and Grand Valley is a good school, big school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Obviously, I mean, you're the golf coach at Columbus State. You're busy doing that. You're busy with the podcast. You're teaching. You're on CBS and PGA Tour Live. Am I forgetting anything else?
You know what, dad and husband and stuff too. In my part time. Yeah, it's full blown, but golf is sort of in my blood, and getting to be over here in the United States and basically doing this is a thrill, and it's a dream come true.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to obviously you're well diversified, but you have a unique aspect too into the game of golf as originally a player. And just now, as a teacher and as a coach, you've covered it all. So your aspects and the way you see things are so unique that it's nice to learn from you on the podcast. You bring guys in, you bring in top teachers of the game, and the wealth of knowledge that you guys talk about for teachers, it's great. And for average golfers, they can learn a lot to understand maybe what their teacher's trying to get them to do. My favorite segment too, the average guy, is, the tips from the tour, where you take the weekly winner and you talk about what can the average guy learn about whoever won that past week. It's great stuff. And I just wanted to commend you on that work and just keep it coming.
Thanks, mate. I appreciate it. That the podcast for me is, maybe in a way it was not self-serving, but, as a young instructor, when I was coming up, I was trying to be noticed, and it was hard, if you don't get on the front of magazine covers. And I worked with some good golfers in my time. And then when the chance to do this came about, and the chance to expose some great young instructors and some, just bright minds within the industry, I jumped at it, and it started small, and the thing's gotten big now. And it's happened despite me. I mean, thankfully, a few really smart folks joined us initially, and then, you just get to talking, and then one guy gets noticed, and then another person gets noticed, and it's sort of grown a personality of its own now, and I'm just along for the ride. Yeah,
but it's what it's done for young instructors. I want to say it was a couple years ago. I was listening to it, and I grew up in the 90s where David Ledbetter was king, and it was more position oriented, how it should look in the mirror video instead of so much the results. And I forget, there was a certain podcast you were talking about, the ball flight tells all, and John Jacobs. You started mentioning him, so I immediately bought the book Practical Golf, and since then I bought all the books that he's written, and it's refreshing because there's a lot of ways to do it, but at the end of the day, you can have a golf swing that's way outside on the takeaway, way inside, but if the results are good, the golf ball, like you guys say, only tells the club's telling the golf ball one thing: where to go. And if it's repeatable and you can do it under pressure, then obviously why change a thing? So I just want to say, in the young instructors out there, I think sometimes get so caught up in TrackMan numbers and technology, but I'm under the belief, as listening to guys like yourself, your TrackMan can be right here. I mean, if you know enough about it.
I'll tell you what. John Jacobs was a human launch monitor. The guy was unbelievable. I had a couple interactions with him, and a couple jumped to mind. The first one, I was on the range at the Open Championship many moons ago, and I was an instructor of the 90s. I had my Sony little handycam, my Sony handycam, and you'd shoot someone and then compare them to Ernie Els or Tiger Woods or whoever it was at the time. And the guy I was working alongside is just covering this massive range. Their balls left and right and high and low, and it's getting increasingly frustrating. And so Dr. John walks by, and the guy with me looks over and goes, "Hey, Doc, would you have a look?" And Jacobs walks up to him, and he hits a few balls, and I never forget, Dr. John sort of whispers in his ear, and he goes, "Do you understand?" And the nod of the head, all of a sudden, the stuff's coming out like raw spaghetti, okay?
That quick.
Yeah, and he walks up to me, and he said to me, "Young man, you're looking in the camera. You're looking in the wrong place."
I love it. Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And then he just pointed at the golf ball in the air.
Yeah.
And that forged me. I learned from David Ledbetter, and I've learned a lot from him, and I'm thankful to Led. But the way Jacobs was, and the way he worked from the golf ball into the club and then into the human being was crazy. I've watched him give a lesson where just to galvanize his points, because he made a point, and there were not naysayers, but folks, they were sort of shaking their heads. So he said to a guy, he goes, "Come hit." So the guy's hitting shots, and John turned his back on the guy and just would watch the golf ball. And then he'd ask him, "So did you hit that well? Or was it in the toe of the heel, or just describe the strike?" He could hear this, but he just wanted confirmation. So he heard strike quality, and he looked at the ball. And as he started to do that, he started to straighten off the guy's ball flight just by knowing how ball and club interacted, and then working from there into the individual's body. And ever since that experience, it's occurred to me that no matter what the level of the player is, from PGA Tour, major champion, to beginning golfer, it's all the same. And launch monitors have allowed us to sort of, short circuit the process a little. But still, if you truly understand how the ball moves, and then you work from there into the club, and from the club into the body, as opposed to the other way around, like a lot of folks do, you're pretty well going to have success as often as you give a lesson.
Yeah, it completely changed. I remember when I was an assistant pro in the mid to 2000s after college, it was more about positions. And I mean, nobody really teaches you this. Like, you got to go find it yourself. And then when I started going by ball flight, and that's how you teach, what's the ball doing? It kind of answers the question for you. The ball's going right, the face is open. I mean, you can go into the paths and you can get as complicated as you want, but at the end of the day, it's face is king, as you say, and I completely agree. And path is queen, and that's simple as that. Do you find?
Yeah, it sounds sort of rudimentary, and it doesn't sound sexy to people, which is the problem, really, because I gave a lesson to a PGA Tour professional at one stage too, and we worked together 2 sessions, and he got significantly better. And he said, "I don't know why you don't have more clients." And I was like, "Well, whatever." And he said, "I think the problem is that what you say is not sexy enough." And I was like, that's interesting, because, so many instructors, and I respect all of them, I bring them all on our show, is you can make it sound like it is rocket science. And you do this, and it's supposed to be more believable. But the truth of it is, when it comes right down to it, I learned this from Mike Furyk, Jim's dad. I was at the Tour Championship a few years ago, and I was working with my brother, who was playing a practice round with Jim. And I'll never forget, on the 12th hole, Jim hits, Trevor hits, we walk off the tee, and Mike's walking alongside, and I said to him, "I just have to commend you." And he laughed. He goes, "Why?" And I'm like, "Because you never fell for anything. You didn't fall for the hype." And Jim slows down, and he listens to all of this. And so I'm like, "So what do you do?" And Jim describes it was real basic. And his father said, "We just work towards a place. We're on the 13th hole on Sunday afternoon at the US Open. If Jim sets up to hit a draw, it's drawing. If he sets up to hit a fade, it's fading. Simple as that. Don't care what it looks like. If it repeats under pressure, and if it does what it's intended to do, it's the right thing." And that also sort of galvanized what I was believing, but sort of came from people that had been exposed to this at the highest level of pressure all of the time.
And it's amazing how those unique swings, like you can go back in time to Calvin Pete or Chi or all these guys, Freddie Couples, those unique swings, and obviously they're talented, but they hold up under pressure so good. I mean, if somebody was to take Furyk or Freddie and try to make them look like the textbook model of the 90s, like Nick Faldo, we wouldn't know who they are.
True. Well, you know, two things to that observation of yours, which is very appropriate. The first thing, and we're seeing this now, I mean, I talked with Terry Rolls the other day, and he and Mike Adams are doing great work. And everything is being tested. So they're testing the human being or the golfer to see, okay, what are you able to do? And then they are just working within those parameters. So what they're advising, you're able to do under pressure. Because the truth of it is, you're always going to be yourself.
Yep.
So if you're trying to do something that you're not physically capable of doing, you're basically barking up the wrong tree, and it's going to be a short avenue because you won't advance very far down there. So that was number one. And then Nick Faldo, who's a dear friend, I asked him on my podcast, I'm like, okay, if you had to do it over again, would you rebuild the golf swing like you did? And he took a second and he goes, yes, but with sort of modifications, if you will. He goes, okay, there were issues of mine that needed addressing. Now, would I have done it the same way? Probably not. But he said, fortunately, it worked out for me. But there are very few folks, Tiger is one, Faldo is another, who can do a complete overall and come out good on the other side. But your average golfer, because of physical limitation, just because of sheer ability to commit, and that's the thing Faldo does. When he commits to something, man, it is to the nth degree.
Yeah.
And he stuck to it. I mean, he shared a story which to me really resonated. He's like, I'll never forget, I was in the midst of these swing changes and I was hitting it all over the place. And I finally made a cut. I can't remember where it was, forgive me. It might have been Mississippi or somewhere like that. And he said, and we flew to Atlanta airport. And everyone took a left to go to the flight to Augusta, Georgia. And I took a right because I was on my way with a week off. And he stuck to what he was doing. And that takes so much, just fortitude. Because at this stage, most folks will be like, whatever, this doesn't work. So it's not just the physical ability, it's the mental acumen and just the resolve to stick to the changes.
Because I feel like, and obviously he's one of the legends. Those guys have such good work ethic. They can put in the hours, and it's amazing to see somebody like Tiger. I mean, he's redone his swing 4 times, 5 times, and it's almost like in an effort to get better, and this is more of a better player thing. And I see this sometimes even with juniors, and I'm sure you see it with your college kids. Mm-hmm. Sometimes effort to get better, they almost take steps back because they are going from swing thought to swing thought, or they don't have a good instructor, or they don't have a good person looking over them as they're doing this. So it's almost that double sword where it's like, all right, I'm trying to get better, but I'm actually hurting myself because I'm not getting this complete understanding. Now, obviously, Faldo had Ledbetter, so he had that guided eye. You're watching your kids, but for the average junior golfer that's 14, 15, 16, and he wants to play college golf, okay? Division I, Division II, Division III, doesn't matter, but he wants to play college golf. What's your advice to him as far as getting better? Like, I mean, we all want to get better, and you know what I'm saying? But this is a 15-year-old kid in high school. He's shooting 78 to 82 and he wants to play college golf. He's got a teacher. I mean, give him some advice.
Learn to make your bad day good. I would say is my first thing. What separates the tournament winners, because remember, a tournament from high school, you might play 9-hole or 18-hole matches, right? College tournaments become 54 holes. If you've got designs beyond, then they become 72 holes. So it's a situation where it's more of a marathon. So what you have to do is to be able to survive your bad day. And I don't care who you are, there will be a bad day mixed in there, or bad 9 holes, or whatever the case might be. So you've got to be able to survive those bad days. And the first thing I will do when I look at an aspirant collegian is see how good they are when they're bad. When you don't have your good stuff, what are you going to shoot? That's my question. So that's sort of the overarching subject. And then to dive into that, I would go, whatever you think the quality of your short game is, get better at it. And each level you are at, you're going to have to get better. I don't care what you say. I don't care what strokes gain metrics say. And Mark Brody and I are friends, okay? If you're good at shot number 3, you are going to make lots of 3s and 4s. I've seen thousands of kids come out of high school that can drive the thing a long ways. But that's never turned into a good score.
No.
It gives you the advantage. It heightens your probability of hitting a good second shot.
Yeah.
But that's never meant birdie ever. And Frank Nobilo said it best. He's like, any given week on the PGA Tour, and I will, and to a certain extent, you can take this to college. The person with the best short game out of all the best hitters is the person who's going to win the tournament.
Yeah.
And you can be hitting it poorly in college, because in college it works like this, in my estimations. Well, in high school, if you just don't make big numbers, 6s, 7s, 8s, you're going to be competitive. In college, if you just don't make too many bogeys and big numbers, you're going to be competitive. It's only on the PGA, well, the tours and above, where you have to start making birdies. And the truth of it is, folks would be surprised listening to this, but currently, now, the tour's in our 80s, but the leading player on the PGA Tour in average birdies made per round has got a number of 4.5.
Really? Wow.
So the leading golfer on the PGA Tour, it's Webb Simpson, incidentally, okay, is making 4.5 birdies on average around. So that trickles down. So think in college, if you make 4 birdies, 5 birdies, that's your special day. But what you just got to do is avoid the big numbers and try and salvage pars from situations. And in high school, you don't even have to be that special. You just mustn't do anything dumb, really.
Yeah.
And then along the lines, Bob Jones was like, the key to golf is to turn 3 strokes into 2. So I would say, get good in your short game. Inside of 60 yards, if you can take 2 more often than not, you're going to have the leg up on your competition.
For sure. And I feel like a lot of the high school and college kids that I coach sometimes have this they don't have this, they're not thinking that they can get away with a bad days. Like, they go warm up, they don't have their swing, they're like panicking, where it's, you don't get to go shoot 82, figure out how to make that a 74 or 5 on your bad day, and figure out how to scrap it around. They have this attitude where I need to hit every shot perfect, or I need to hit 80% of my shots good. And when you talk to the best players and you sit down with them, and I'm sure you know this, and you say, how many great shots did you hit today? You can count them on one hand.
Yeah, less than that. Mm-hmm.
And I just think that having that mentality of going out there and figuring out a way to get it done, good players have, and a lot of young players don't have that yet. They don't get that till later.
On my college team, look, I don't expect, because perennially we're a sound team who can shoot low. But I have a rule on the team that if you shoot an 80, the next day you have to shoot 72 or better to back it up. If you don't, you get your head shaved. Because I want you to look like the fool that you were when you were shooting 80. And the point how I write this home is something I learned way back. I can't remember who taught me this, but the individual said to me, he goes, to shoot 79, you can do it like this: hit 7 greens in regulation and 2 putt those. He goes, then miss 7 greens in regulation and chip and putt those. He said, and then miss another 7 greens, 6 greens, pardon me, 6, 6, and 6. So 6 greens in regulation, 2 putts. 6 greens missed, chip and putt those. And then he said, the final 6 greens, I want you to miss them and chip and 1 putt those. That adds up to 79 on any regulation golf course, because you basically made 12 pars and a few bogeys. So I look at the team, I'm like, think about it from that mindset. You would probably play differently off certain tees. You play differently on certain approach shots. Because if I said to you, the mandate now is to miss the next 7 greens, but chip and putt every single one, you would start to pick different targets. You might leave alone the flagstick that's cut in behind the bunker on the right-hand side of the hole. Because if you miss, because now I've told you you're going to miss the green and you got to get up and down. So you survey the land over there and you're like, well, I better hit it to this side. And that's what Scott Fawcett has done basically with Decade. And so I look at the kids, I'm like, that's the equation. If you just do that which is average for your level of play, you're shooting 78 or 9. And then they're like, eyes wide open.
Yeah, it's amazing the mentality. I used to do on the scorecards, I would draw a line every 6 holes. So you'd have 3 6-hole segments. And when you're playing good, you'd be like, I want to play 1 under or 2 under of those. When you're playing bad, you'd be like, all right, 2 over in 6 holes. And if you do that throughout the round, now you're 78. Now it's not that bad, but when you're same thing, exact same thing.
Absolutely. Well, you can see my arithmetic. I was going through this in sevens. Maybe it's because, yeah, but you're right. 6 holes at a time. Justin Thomas, to bring some PGA Tour to this. He was on my podcast, and that guy he turns good days low as often as anyone on tour. So I asked him how he does it, and he broke it down into 3-hole segments. And he said he looks at the holes and he's like, okay, on these holes I should pick up 1, and those holes we're going to play those even. These holes maybe I can get 2. And so he just starts to say, and whether he's 5 under or whether he's 8 under, he just keeps going the same way. On that 59 that he shot in Hawaii, when I was calling it for that round, he was going nuts, and then things settled down for a while. And then he ended up finishing with a late birdie, and he eagled his last hole for 59. And still, it was just him settling. So I think he was 8 under through 10. And then for a while, he made just all pars, but he never panicked. He just was like, okay, I'm going through my 3-hole bits. And he picked up a few on the last 3-hole segment, basically.
Yeah, he is. He's a talent for sure. And it's cool to see that father-son relationship. And obviously, he's the 3rd generation golf pro, so it's even cooler to see, PGA's pro son have the success that he has had. It's he seems like he's got a great head on his shoulders, and I've enjoyed the conversations we've had with him and his father. Yeah,
well, look, the one thing I was asked about this the other day, the one thing that Justin and his dad have done is they've remained true to who Justin is. They've never fallen for anything. There was a stage where Justin was injured. There was a stage when he wasn't winning like he should have, but they just keep doing what they did. There was never any panic. When things don't go well, there's no panic that sets in. They have their blueprint. They know what he's able to do, and they do just that. He plays a lot of golf with Ricky and Rory and all these guys and Spieth. And when you play with Spieth, he'll expose your short game, and because this guy's a wizard around the greens. And so JT and him are best buds, but JT has maybe aspired to that short game work, but he's never tried to do what Jordan does. He does his thing and gains strokes in his way. And Ricky is a fantastic ball striker. He hits balls high. And, JT's never fell for that. He just does what he does. And in the end, I think, well, right now, he's the alpha dog amongst that group.
He is. He's playing the best for sure. I'm hopeful. I'm a big Jordan fan. When this break is done, maybe this break is helping him and he can get it back. And I think the biggest thing with the player of his ability and guys that you work with in even college is a lot of them are perfectionists and they want it and they work hard. And it's just sometimes that can hurt you instead of just going like what JT is doing, be like, this is my way. I'm going to stay true to myself and not veer. Just if you're going to have rough patches, just put your head down, keep working hard, and you'll get through them.
Yeah, well, it's sort of like a business. I often say this to aspirant professionals. I'm like, so you want to be a professional? Well, I'm like, well, then behave like a professional, because if I had to turn professional into the word profession, it's a job and it's like work. And if you and I are in the same business and you putting out fantastic jackets, if I copy your jacket, I'm just a copy. And you're probably still going to occupy the lion's share of the market. But if I look at the jacket and say, well, this is what I'm going to do to corner my share of the market, and I'm going to do that as well as I can, then we're both going to be successful in our own way. And you might have a time because your jacket's rainproof that you are going to kill it. And then I'm going to have a time because my jacket is whatever that I'll dominate and you weren't doing so well. So you understand the business of it. And that's what businesses do. They do a SWOT analysis. So their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And Jordan's strength is his short game and his iron play. But the driver was tripping him up. So he went after the driver for a while. And I feel like in so doing, the putting fell off for a bit. Then he went and tried to fix putting for a while. And then the other elements fell off. So he's sort of backing and forthing between the stuff a little bit. Yeah. Well, again, Justin Thomas is like, I drive it. He developed a shot he called the fairway finder. He tears the thing down, slides this low fade in the fairway. So on a tee shot he's not comfortable on, he does that. He was not that great from inside like 150. Developed the soft arm wedge, takes spin off the thing, flats it down. I mean, he's dangerous now. And the short game has improved. but it wasn't like he was bouncing around between stuff very much.
Yeah, and I think at a club level, and I'm sure certainly with guys you work with sometimes, it can be that way where they're making some kind of a swing change, where they're focusing on their full swing. The next thing you know, they're going out to play, they're hitting the ball better, but now they can't putt and chip. Well, because they haven't practiced that in a month. So I'm sure you've seen. So even at an average golfer can learn something from that.
Yeah, you certainly can. I mean, a dear friend and one of the great minds in the game is a guy called Bill Kratzert. You know, is winner in the PGA Tour, announcer for PGA Tour Live, and does a little work with CBS once in a while. And he is. You can start throwing the strokes gain metrics at him, and he raises the finger and he goes, "There's one number I'm interested in, the number in the bottom right corner on the scorecard." He goes, and whatever's happening, you've got to work towards lowering that number. And so you've got to be savvy about what you're doing, because again, if I'm driving it crooked, logging 3, 4, 5 hours a day just hitting drivers, that's going to maybe take some big scores off your card, like 6s and 7s, because you've hit this wide stuff.
Yeah.
You're not going to up your birdie count because you're driving it 10 yards farther and straighter. And then you might work on your iron game, but the truth of it is, on the range of a flat lie, hitting at the same target, that's not like you're going to do on the golf course. So if you want to work on hitting targets, it's about shot selection. Have something, certainly, don't get me wrong, I'm a teacher. Develop something that is reliable, swing-wise. And then go and put it through its paces, uphills, downhills, side hills, uncomfortable wind directions. Because I find with a lot of golfers, the misses, this is at the high level and probably at the amateur level too, the misses are situational. And if folks listening to this go, if they truly pay attention, like if they had an analyst walking with them, and the analyst would be paying attention to, well, that's 3 shots now he's missed with a wind in and off the left-hand side and trouble down the left. And he's missed weak to the right. The golfer in this situation goes, there's something up with me. I'm missing 3 balls short right. Yes. So remember, there could be situations that are aggravating this thing too. In which case, then, you're going to go and try and simulate those so that you can put what you've done into the same thing so you can learn to deal with it and learn how you're going to modify. Because at the highest level of the game, these guys adapt quicker and better than other golfers, in my opinion.
For sure. And you even see that at the club level and guys who teach, where under the gun or they feel some pressure for the first time, and they notice that all their shots then flare to the right, or that you can start to get a trend, and then you identify, all right, how do I fix this? Obviously, there's a fault in my game. When I get under the gun, I'm missing it to the right. And now you're taking that weakness and you're going to work on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, again, absolutely. You bearing the ball flight in mind, be able to read the shot that you're hitting and understand what you've got to do to remedy. But be careful that you're not just reacting. I think the worst thing that a golfer can do is react. The best advice, I'd forgotten it, I might actually talk about this in a podcast or whatever. Okay. A guy said to me, a well-respected, not world-renowned teacher, but he was well-respected, said to me, he goes, I will only start really changing someone's technique if he brings me the same problem 3 days in a row.
Really? Okay.
He goes, one day it might be that he woke up on the wrong side of the bed. 2 days in a row, I'll start to sort of look and pay attention. But if it's 3 days in a row, then there's something amiss. Yeah. Now, if you're just hitting and hoping and it's 3 days in a row, well, make sure you're focusing on stuff. But watch too that we don't react, because golf nowadays, folks just react so fast.
Yeah, sure do.
Because on the tour, money's so big, and there's so much notoriety, and social media is, there's so much awareness on stuff. But yes. In the long haul, think about this on the tour. Rory was the FedEx Cup champ last year, right? I think he won, 3 times, maybe 4 times?
Sure did, yeah.
So effectively, he played well. He finished outside the top 10 like 1 time, I think, the entire season.
Amazing.
By his lofty standards, he failed. How many events he plays? 18. He failed 14 of those.
Yeah.
So he never then, and that's where McIlroy's been great. He's like, okay, perspective, all these P words, patience, that sort of stuff. So there's not panic. That's a P you want to avoid. Because a lot of golfers, as soon as they have a bad day, they're on the range and they're tooling on something. Just keep to the path. Because if you say to one of your clients, or I do, I'm like, okay, you're a 7 handicap right now and your best score is 75. If I said to you, okay, you're going to shoot 80, 81, 78, 80, 79, and then you're going to all of a sudden start to trend better, would you take it at the end of the year? And they'd be like, of course they would. But then they have that 185 day, and then they're like, oh my goodness, the world's coming to an end. Yep. Then all of a sudden you're like, there's something wrong. And then you get into working on something when you could have been going in the right direction.
And that's usually when you or I get the email or phone call that they need the lesson now.
Yeah, the tyranny of the urgent, right? Yeah, I know. It's crazy. You see it on the tour. You see it at every level because golf is such an emotional deal.
Yeah, it is.
And it's amazing how the greats are able to be emotional because that ramps up the adrenaline and all that sort of stuff. But then that gets switched off and they're pragmatic again. Yeah. Like Woods is a master. You watch him. If you see him on the golf course, the guy is stone-faced. And he just does his thing. All of a sudden, there's a massive highlight fist pump. Yep. And then there's Tiger clubbing the ground because he's aggravated. But right thereafter, he's back into business. He's like a horse with blinkers on.
He's got a little bit of that Ben Hogan in him. When he's standing there, he's got that glare and just just steely eyes.
It's crazy. All of them are in a funny sort of a way. Now, you must be true to your personality. I mean, for me, I started golf late. But as a 13-year-old, I got to meet David Frost, one of South Africa's great golfers. And Frosty helped me with my game some. And he was very stoic on the golf course. Mm-hmm. And so he was sort of my hero at the time. I watched golf on TV, but Frosty was my guy. So I tried to be like him. And then I come to realize a few years later that this is just not who I am. I had to keep it a little more lighthearted, where the more I was trying to be like David personality-wise, the more it was getting me into like this sort of self-effacing cocoon. Yeah. When I started to enjoy the thing a bit more and play my sort of style, that's when I got better. So you got to be able to identify who you are as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. You look at guys on tour, some guys like to talk nonstop. Some guys like Tiger don't want to say one word, and they're true to themselves and they figure out what works for them. And if you're trying to be somebody that's not you, it's not going to work. Same with the golf swing, same with everything.
There was a cool anecdote that I saw the other day from Tony Finau. And last year at the Masters 2019, Finau was in the final group with Tiger. They had 3 balls that day. It was Molinari, Finau, and Tiger. And Tiger 2.0 is a bit more easygoing on the course than what the first edition of Tiger was. And was the guy that Tony knew. They've been on teams together. He's been in the team room at President's Cups and Ryder Cups and such. So they walked off the first tee, apparently, and he strikes up a conversation with Woods. And I don't know what Woods said, but Tony's anecdote was, I quickly got the message that there was going to be no talking happening today. And he goes, all right. And then he got for the full view of the Tiger Woods that all of these youngsters were wanting, where this guy's like, I got a job to do. You're in my way. You got nothing to do with me. You and I are buds. But right now, I've got 18 holes I got to work. And I think there's so much to be learned in that.
Yeah, well, I remember watching that final round. It was like those first 6 or 7 holes, Tiger was kind of just stuck in neutral, making pars, but he was grinding. He wasn't really losing ground. He was just hanging around, waiting for his chance on the back 9. So it was pretty cool to see that Tiger that I grew up with and that we all love kind of just know that his time was coming. He was ready to pounce as soon as that happened on 12. It was his.
Yeah, there's such a lesson in course management too, and just sticking to the plan. Yeah. Tiger knew, I think, that if he shoots 68 or whatever he did, I believe he shot 69. I don't know what it was. That if he gets under par in a difficult day in the final group there, that's going to be enough. Yeah. So even through 8 was no big deal. He knew there was chances out in front. Molinari way out in front was no big deal. He knew there was a bunch of swing holes in front. Yeah. He knew that everyone attacking 12 was likely to happen. And if he hits the thing right over the middle of that bunker onto the green, he's likely going to gain strokes. Yeah. And so it was a masterclass in just the patience of it all. It's a cliched word, but it sort of reminds me of a story where Ernie Els, we sort of contemporaries. He's a little bit older than me, but we played a lot of amateur golf together in South Africa. I remember asking Ernie when he turned professional, like, okay, what's the goal now? Because this guy was superhuman. And he said, I just want to shoot 69 for the rest of my career.
Okay.
Because if you do that, I mean, the guy's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And that's always been his goal. You do that 4 times, you shoot 12 under. There are events you're going to win with 12 under.
Oh, half of them at least?
And look at the events that he's won. He's won a couple of US Opens. He's won an Open, you know, and you watch the way he plays. He attacks the golf course as such.
Yeah.
And the birdie fest, this is something I try and impress upon in college kids. I'm like, understand that even though the scores are all over the show, if you shoot 467s, that's 20 under par. Okay. And 467s adds up to birdie four of the fives and one else, and don't do anything silly.
It's crazy. It's crazy how the mindset, when you start thinking of it in logical ways, it's like, oh yeah, you know, 69 for those guys, sometimes they're like, oh, it's not low enough. I want to be shooting 66, 67. Well, no, 69 is low enough if you can do it 4 times in a row.
Mm-hmm.
All mine.
You talk about Tiger Woods. I mean, in Tiger Woods' heyday, his first round he just wouldn't get into trouble.
Yeah.
Then he'd build in the second round, build in the third, and then the fourth round he'd pounce. Trevor shared a story. I've never gotten to talk at length with Jack Nicklaus, but my brother spoke with him, and he said to me that Nicklaus basically said to him, he goes, I'm not stressed about Thursday, Friday. He goes, I just want to start finding my game on Saturday sometime.
That's crazy.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Where a young professional comes out, they're like, I just want to make the cut. Nicklaus is like, I'm just cruising. I'm not going to attack or defend. I mean, look, if the moment presents itself, you'll obviously take advantage. But you're just cruising along there, and then you want to start finding your groove when you get into the third corner kind of deal.
It's one of those where it's just like with Tiger. Whenever I watch Tiger at Augusta, because like everybody, that's my favorite week. My buddy and I would always talk, well, as long as Tiger shoots basically even par the first round, he's in great position. He just can't shoot 74, 75. And I believe it was a year or two ago when he played, it was his first round that he had ever shot in the 60s in the first round.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. I mean, even you look at 97, he went 40-30 in that first round and shot 70, but he didn't shoot in the 60s, and he ran away from the field then in 97. So it's always like, just leave yourself in a position to attack.
It gets back to our conversation earlier, where it's like, there'll be some purple patches where things going right, and there'll be some times when it doesn't. And when it doesn't, you've just got to try and mitigate damage as much as you can, and just honestly stay in the game. Don't take the knockout punch. Just try and keep upright, keep the ball out in front of you, because something will change. That I can promise you.
For sure. Last question I want to ask you. You've been more than fair with your time. I really appreciate it. I mean, I know you're busy. You got obviously family right now and kids at home. You're at home, so I appreciate it. When golf comes back, whenever it does, and it's on TV, it's going to be an outlet for a lot of us to watch the game that we love. And other than just watching it, what's one thing the average golfer you think can look at golf on TV in a new way and maybe learn and apply something that you can pick up? That, I mean, you're a commentator and an instructor. I mean, you're out there calling golf. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you wish the average guy would understand? Like maybe they see this a little bit more in a different light on TV. What could they learn from golf?
Yeah, I'll tell you right away, is I do my best on-course announcing when I don't have to say anything. And that means that the parab mic is close enough to the player-caddy interaction that you get their conversation. And you can make it a drinking game. You can make fun of this. When you watch the first live telecast, or in fact, when you watch some of the re-airs now over the next, however long it is, listen for how often you hear the caddy go at the television tower and then drink. You'll be surprised how often that caddy goes right at the TV tower. And they set those TV towers up over the middle of the green. And the player never disagrees with it. You fire it straight at the TV tower, because if you hit the ball into the middle of every green with hole locations, the longest you're going to have is 25 feet or so. And so in so doing, you're keeping yourself in the game, and you'll rattle in one or two of those. Yeah. So that's the first thing I'd say. And then the second thing is, have a look how infrequently the PGA Tour player three putts.
Okay.
Something Hank Haney has propagated for the longest time. He goes, you want to lower your scores, avoid penalty strokes, and don't three putt.
Yeah.
And watch the broadcast how few times these guys three putt, and how a lot of their birdies are sort of made from the 15, 20, 25-foot range.
Yep.
You'll see the odd highlight shot where the guy fizzes one in there to about 5 feet or whatever. But a lot of the birdies are picked up, count putts made. And you'll see the birdies are longer range stuff. And then take that to when you go and play. Go and aim at your TV tower. Imagine it's behind the green and get on the practice putting green and work on lag putting. Just avoid three putts and you'll be well on your way to lowering your score.
Yeah, that would help a lot.
Mm.
Yeah. Stop shooting at those pins in the corners and, get some speed control down and those scores will come down for sure.
To that, funnily enough, Webb Simpson, I love him. I mean, he's a smart guy. And he's been on my podcast twice. And the most recent one, I asked him, I'm like, no, it might have been Colin Morikawa. Forgive me, I'm having a senior moment here. But one of them, Morikawa, was fantastic with his iron game, said that my 8-iron is my favorite club. He goes, see, if I have an 8-iron in my hand, I can go ahead and attack. But the rest of the stuff, I'm sort of playing a little defense.
Really?
Yeah. And I think Webb said so too. It's like everyone has a favorite club. And if you've got your favorite club in your hand, you can go ahead and have a go under, in smart situations. Don't just go firing away with everything. So I'd say that number one, and then realize that, okay, if you've got maybe a wedge or sand wedge or 9-iron or lower, then you can attack something. But still attack to the safe side of the target. Because the worst thing is when you hit a beautiful drive, you've got a wedge in your hand and you undercut one or you misjudge the wind and all of a sudden you're making a bogey.
Yeah.
So be aggressive, but use discretion. But if you have your favorite club, I've got no problem if you try. But if it's a ridiculous hole location, just leave it alone. Par is never going to hurt you. 18 times 4 is 72. And if you do 4 18 times, you're going to be just fine.
Exactly. Win a couple U.S. Opens, right?
Probably, yeah.
Well, Mark, I really appreciate your time and getting back to me and doing this. It means a lot. And I hope that the people watching this will tune in and listen to your podcast. We're all going outside for fresh air just to get away from the stair craziness of at home. If we're walking a dog, we just get outside. Your podcast is awesome. Keep it going. And hopefully you'll be back on tour calling the action soon. So thank you so much.
It's my pleasure, Jimmy. Keep up your great work. And it was fun being on with you. Thanks.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Talk to you soon. That's it. Bye.